A community member in the PCAR Market comments section discovers an error in the seller's listing of this 996 GT3. Was it a simple error on the seller's part, or is this listing burnt? Let's find out.
Bit Nerds is your daily YouTube card game show, where we predict the online auction results of the most interesting cars on Bring a Trailer, Cars and Bids, Hagerty Marketplace, and more. It's just like the Price is Right game show. Play along and see if you can beat the nerds.
You know, BAT is pretty on top of reserves these days. They had a moment there where I think there was a big shift in the market. It happened fairly quick, and I think BAT and all the platforms have adjusted pretty well. Except for maybe our boys at, I don't know, PCAR Market. I think they're still pretty darn aggressive in the sense that they are not lowering the reserves. They're letting reserves do whatever the heck the seller wants. But we have an example of a car coming up here on PCAR Market from a very good seller, someone that we know knows his stuff and someone that we know isn't going to ask a ridiculous reserve. And I'm excited about this next car. And I swear I won't shoot it with a shotgun. Introduce the next car, please, Michael Deeb.
All right, on PCAR Market is Chris Carbines of Carbine Motor Cars in New Orleans, Louisiana, has a 9,000-mile example of this 2005 Porsche 996 GT3. Now, truth be told, this car ran in July on Bring a Trailer, where it was bid to $136,000, where it narrowly missed meeting reserve back then. What was interesting was that they had taken some photos from underneath the car on a lift at Carbine Motor Cars, and they didn't really examine the photos themselves. But as people have their computers and they can blow up photos to extraordinary measurements and everything's high definition, they noticed just ever so slightly that there was just the slightest weep from the rear main seal, and they blew it up in the comments. And that's what sort of held it back from crossing that 140 and getting on up into that $150,000 range, which is where you would expect an 8,000-mile spectacular example of a 2005. Most of these are 04s, by the way, so having an 05 means it's one of a, by the numbers, it's one of a handful for the model year, 996 GT3, which are strong cars. A little bit like the E46. 996 GT3s are pretty strong. So the car failed to sell. The consignor agreed to have the rear main seal, and ultimately the flywheel were changed while they were in there. And then they put a new front lower lip spoiler on, which was not on the car when the photos were taken as it went to BAT. So they put a brand new rubber lower lip spoiler on the front, reshot the car, and now the car is brought back to market, this time on PCAR Market's platform. So PCAR Market says it is marketing as a 9,000-mile example, but the true mileage is just 8,240. So I don't understand why PCAR Market is doing that as a 9,000-mile car. They should just write the miles on there. But anyways, who knows why PCAR Market does anything. Chris Carbine is a fantastic seller, very honest person. I actually personally have met the owner, the consignor of this car, who is a close personal friend of Chris Carbine's. He is a great guy. He is a hardcore Porsche dude. Carbine and this consignor and a handful of their friends all took a trip this fall and went to Germany, and they went to Roof and Alpina and early 911S, and they went to the Nürburgring and they ate bratwurst and drank beer. I mean, these are just, JP, if you and I had that kind of money, we would be doing the same sort of things. And maybe when we get to be their age, we might do the same things if we're lucky and if we live that long. Mm-hmm. But you couldn't hope to get a car from a nicer owner or a nicer dealership. So I present to you, JP, Chris Carbine's friends 996 GT3, an 05, super low miles, brand new flywheel and rear main seal, brand new front lower lip spoiler. This car is spectacular. John, if I could have gotten off of my turbo look, apples to apples, I would have just put that money right back into this car and called it a day. I would have sat on this car for years. I would love to own one of these. There might not be a nicer one out there. The leather on the driver's seat is almost free of creases. It's got some cocoa mats. I know silver is kind of a hum color, but damn, this thing looks really, really good. I actually think too, John, I might have forgotten to say it. I think they updated No, take a look at that PCM. Is that the standard PCM, or do they upgrade to that classic radio? I forget now. I know
Flipping through
Armand
here.
is-
Oh yeah, that looks like. Well, no. Is that an aftermarket one? I'm trying to get to.
No,
it.
that's
Chris. What stereo is that? That's not the new Porsche stereo, is it?
is that yeah. It's
a double DIN stereo. But,
yeah, it says Bluetooth. Would that have Bluetooth 06? Yeah, I guess it would.
I mean, there is the new Porsche. It looks like it's got the
the
sticker on there.
PCM one.
The new one.
But it would say but it would,
Porsche Classic,
it would say
right?
CarPlay. Yeah, and it would say Classic on it. So I don't think that's a new one. But I don't know. I could be wrong. But anyway, the car closes, JP, in 2 days. So it closes 2 days from now. Talk to me about your experience with 996s. I know you had that car that's in the commercial that you loved. I was actually surprised you turned that car so quickly because it seemed like such a beautiful vocation of a 996 GT3. Have you driven a real GT3 from the 996 variety with that smaller 3.6 motor?
They are hands down my favorite. Well, I don't know about hands down, but 996 GT3 is probably my favorite modern Porsche.
Yeah.
I think if I had my choice, I would certainly choose one over any 991 GT3 variant. It would be a difficult choice to go 996 GT3 versus 997 GT3. That would be, gosh dang, that would just kind of, I think at that point it would come down to color and price and stuff like that. But all things being equal, I might still lean towards the 996 GT3. It's a bummer that that the first listing kind of got, didn't make it to reserve. And when you discover stuff like that in the photos, that there's a minor leak, this era of Porsche and all these modern Porsches. I mean, the thing is, especially 996s and 997s, the 996 was still kind of a new platform. This is the very end of that, of this model line. But a lot of these cars, when they don't get driven, things like rear main seals leak. I mean, that's just how it goes. And so that's one of the downsides of buying something like this that's modern, but it's still almost 20 years old and it doesn't have very many miles. So a lot of the maintenance that would have been covered, a lot of these things that were kind of design flaws that would have been dealt with by the factory under warranty, they wind up, these are normal kind of wear and tear maintenance costs that wind up getting passed on to the new owners in the future when they get up to that 30, 40, 50,000 mile range. So whatever, this car is so spectacular, and it does have the Metzger engine, so no IMS to worry about. This is not the kind of engine that's going to explode into a gajillion pieces inside and ruin your investment, unlike regular 996s and 997s, the first generation. So you're pretty safe in that regard. But you're still, if you do get this car, know that there is going to be some maintenance costs in the future. That said, it's just it's one of the most glorious cars to drive. I remember when this car was, it was probably 2007, 2008. So the 997 had been out for a little while, and I had a 996 C4S, and I took it to the dealership for some service work, and they had they had basically this exact car, GT3 in the 996 variant. And since I had some time at the dealership, I talked to the salesperson. I was waiting for my car to get serviced, and they're like, yeah, let's go for a drive. And I remember driving the thing just going, oh my God, I didn't realize that was my first GT3 experience. I had no idea just how much better it was than the other cars. And again, I came right out of a C4S that had a bunch of cool mods and everything like that. So it had a bunch of extra performance, but to go from that car into a GT3 996 was like, oh my God, I just can't believe how good this is. And ever since then, I've been pining for one. But I remember basically talking to the salesperson going, God, can I trade in? He's like, yeah, we'll give you like 40 for your C4S. And the GT3 was $60,000. It was like 20 grand more. I was like, oh, that's way too much. I can't, for a 996, that's nuts. And now it's like, holy cow. Yeah, I would. And that's the thing. That's the problem is that, up until pre-COVID, call it 2020, these were still kind of in that $50,000, $60,000 range. And then once everything took off in that 2021 range time, they started getting over 100. We're going, oh my gosh, 120. Oh my God. Now 120, 130. 130, 140 is just, that's kind of the norm for this car. And it's awesome for the car, but it still presents a great bang for the buck. But sadly for me, it probably prices me out at that point. All that said, what do we think this is going to bring, Michael Deeb?
Can you believe the 3-4 years I was at Godden, we never had a 996 GT3. I still haven't driven this car.
Wow.
I've never driven one. We had a 996 GT2 for over a year that I drove and took to fairs and festivals and had a blast driving that car. And that car was amazing. But I've never driven this. And I love that you like it. It's one of your favorites. Paul Kramer, who's been on the show a handful of times, swears that this is his favorite modern 911 as well. So without further ado, and again, with 2 days before it closes, our car is sitting at $75,000 on 10 bids. This car stands up. I think it's going to do well despite the platform. You also have a reputable and experienced seller that the consignor has trusted to bring the car to market. And with that in mind, JP, I think the car should bring what it's worth, which is $145,000.
Yeah, I think this car has a good chance at breaking the number that it got on BAT. Even when back then things were a little bit better place in the market, and it wasn't in the middle of the winter or right at the beginning of winter, really. Could this car get 145? I think it's worth it. I think it should. I think PCAR Market sometimes brings that, sometimes doesn't. It's hit and miss with PCAR Market. I think if Chris had hired me to make a film about the car, it would definitely get 145, maybe 200. Wink, wink. But I'm gonna come in. Under. I'm gonna go 135,996 and hope you're right, Michael Deeb.
Yeah. So they did such a great job, JP. I don't want to shortcut this. Paint meter readings, no over revs with a DME report. No time in any of the three ranges, and not a single over rev in any of the three ranges. I mean, this car has been lovingly cared for. And then, like I said, they did the flywheel and the rear main seal, and then provided receipts in the copy so that people can see all the work that was documented. So I think this car is going to do well. John, give me your bid again. 130.
I think it was 135,996. Yeah, I mean, look, Chris did all that extra work too. He did the RMS and the flywheel, and I mean, all those things just add up to basically the perfect car. And if someone can get it in an off-season discount, hey, good for them. But I hope it brings all the money for Chris. And I think that even if someone does pay a premium, that's fine. This is a super low-mile car with all the maintenance. Go get this car, get in it, and start ripping it, man. I'm super jealous of whoever winds up with this car, unless they happen to be the type of person that buys this car just as a collector car and they don't drive it, in which case their life is their punishment and they are a bad person. Hey guys, I gotta tell you about our friends Godden Porsche of Las Vegas and Godden Classic. If you're looking for a new Porsche or a classic, you gotta call our friend Steve at Godden. Save yourself the hassle of screwing around with all the auctions like we always talk about, and just talk to Steve. He'll find you the classic Porsche you're looking for. Godden Porsche of Las Vegas. Hey guys, you're probably looking at your watch and wondering if Bid Nerds will ever end. So you better talk to our friends at Our Smiths to make sure your Rolex, Tag Heuer, AP, or any fine timepiece is in tip-top shape. Our Smiths, fine Swiss repair.
That's it.
You look great, Anthony. You guys did a great job on the commercial there. We'll show it again.
He's way more serious doing his job than we are doing ours.
Apparently. All right. What was the next car we talked about on the last episode?
All right. Really good friend of the show. Awesome Porsche enthusiast, dealer principal, Chris Carbine of New Orleans, Louisiana. Is selling a car on PCAR Market. Sold a car. Well, there's a spoiler alert. Sold a car this week on PCAR Market. It's the 2005 Porsche 996 GT3. PCAR Market lists it with 9,000 miles, but the car only has 8,200 miles on it. Spectacular car. The consignor that owns this car, I'm not giving away too much, is actually a good personal friend, like a real buddy of Chris Carbine's down there in the great state of Louisiana. And this is his personal car. They tried to sell it earlier in the summer on BAT, where the car made it up to around $136,000. But the photographs they took underneath the car revealed a just ever so damp, barely weeping rear main seal. And so they got lit up in the comments, and the car kind of capped out before it got into the threshold of like 140, 145, 150, which is where they were all hoping it would go. So at 136, the car was a no sale. They took it down. They fixed the rear main seal. While they were in there, they changed the flywheel. They put a new front rubber Porsche lower rear valance on the front of that car, and then reshot the car and brought it back to market on PCAR Market, where it ran. And was a good listing, and there you go. So we covered it, and I thought because they overcame the objection that prevented it from getting to the retail number they wanted it to get to hit the reserve and get to the retail they were looking for on BAT. I thought it would get there with the new batch of photos and all this other stuff. So I jumped in deep, JP. I said 145,000. You came in at 135,996, which is essentially in principle or indeed the same number that it reached on BAT, which is a pretty heady bet, I think. So before we give away the result, do we have again or any of the things coming in, the old bids?
I'm not seeing the numbers yet.
All right,
from
maybe
the
Randy's going to join us at 7:30 right when we wrap up the show.
Yeah.
So anyways, our car sold for $130,000 on 49 bids. So a couple things to unpack here. One, I have not talked to Chris Carbon, so I do not know if PCAR Market called them and asked them to lower or pull the reserve. I would have thought that they would have set the reserve at a little bit higher number. So I'm surprised by that result. In that, I would have thought that they would have tried to get into that old range. So the car reached 130 and it's sold there, which means I think Chris and his consignor made a decision to go ahead and get rid of the car, because I would have thought going back to market and spending the money to fix the things in the first place that they would have been trying to recoup at least some of that money. And then what's the other thing? 49 bids is a lot of action, JP. That there was action on the car. People wanted it, but in my honest opinion, I don't feel like 130 is the retail for that car. Not a car with, again, this was a car that had a weeping rear main seal due to age, not miles or abuse. You know what I mean? Like, this car is spectacular condition. So, when I see 130 and you talk about interest like you do, that to me is not a retail number. And so I'm a little surprised by that. What do you think? What do you think of that result? This one's a little baffling to me. I really thought they would have, either decided to keep the car or go a different route or whatnot. But they took the money and got rid of it. And I totally understand that. But I don't think 130 represents a retail number for that car. I still think this car should be in the 140s. What do you think?
I think Chris got a payoff from Rent a Junk Bus. Back here in the background, those guys paid for some advertising. That's awesome. And we're like, yeah, man. I mean, that probably paid the extra 10 grand. Exactly. Grand. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was
there's
it.
Deeb's 145 right there.
Right there. Yeah. That's the real number.
Yeah.
No, I think, look, the Jubilee car that we were just talking about is such a premium car. And it is such a collectible car that I think that is kind of that's an investment grade car. Let's be honest, right?
Okay.
This particular car sits kind of in both places. It's not really, this could be considered an investment car, but not as good as something like a super rare colored numbered air-cooled car.
Yeah.
So a GT3 996 variant is always going to be a blue chip car with low miles.
Yeah.
But it's definitely not, it's not top end. This is a car that I suspect there's a lot of people that are looking at a car like this one that are genuinely considering driving it, owning this car, driving it around, put 5,000 miles on it, 10,000 miles on it over a couple of years, and then maybe sell it again and kind of, as a way to hedge your car investment. Because remember, cars usually aren't a good investment. When you buy a car, typically you expect to have that cost you money. It wasn't really until somewhat recently, in the last few years that everybody started getting this idea that, I can buy a car that's a few years old. I can buy this kind of special car and I'll make money on it. usually if you're going to try to make money on a car, it's a long game. It's a 10, 15 year thing, right? So this car, I think it's a seasonal play. You know, the value at $130, he did really well in PCAR Market. Let's face it, we don't always love PCAR Market, but sometimes they do bring really good money. But I think in December of 2023, getting $130 is pretty damn good for this car. And I don't know if there's a platform that could do better. At any, I don't know if BAT could have done better. I don't know if your Haggerty could have done better. Even if you had a higher reserve, that doesn't necessarily mean it would get that, right?
No, not
so
at
I
all.
I think Chris made the smart play and sold this thing at $130. Get out of the car, move on, and get that money mobile if that's what you're going to do with it.
Well, I want to. Oh, go ahead. I want to give you a couple facts about the car before we jump to the next one, though.
Well, yeah, I mean, because there was some other drama going on with this car. There was, I think, something that's interesting about the actual listing was the fact that Chris admitted there were a bunch of comments, and this is where the community comes in, right? Sometimes the community can be a major pain in the ass, those comments, and sometimes they can be helpful to the buyers. Sometimes they just muddy the waters and screw everything up. I think we had a situation here where someone was, hey, look at me, I know things. They were getting really persnickety about the DME report, and as it turns out, there was a DME report problem, but it wasn't one of these things it wasn't like the seller did something
dishonest.
In bad faith. The seller literally, because they are a dealer, and this happens, right? You're a dealer and you're a small dealer. It's not like a big, huge corporation dealer, but it's a small dealer where you deal with a handful of cars. It's one guy, and
Chris can see his entire inventory standing in one part of the room.
Right, exactly. And so how many DME reports does he have, in his, downloads folder, right?
Yeah.
So he grabs it and uploads it and forgets about it, right? Because who's going to really look? People are just looking to see overrips. He put the wrong one up.
Yeah.
That's absolutely something I would do. Absolutely.
Or the wrong voiceover.
Right. And so he calls, he's called on it and he just fixed it.
Yeah.
And
here's
that's
the
the right thing to do.
Right.
Because the guy who was making the comments was kind of trying to be, hey, no, actually, that internet guy, I found that there's a discrepancy in the thing. He's the guy that finds that one bolt that's not, screw that guy, right? Yeah. But in this particular case, no one pushed it any further. It was an obvious error, and the correct report was put up, and it confirmed everything that the seller said. And I think that's why this car continued on and finished well in a December close, in the bottom of the season. I think this is going to do pretty well. And I think in spring, this car is $140. I think maybe it's $145. Because I think people are going to be raring to go. The big thing is going to be how much profit, how much profit taking will there be here in the next couple of weeks? Because at some point we always see a big sell off in the stock market, right? Because everybody wants to take those profits, and before the end of the year, or a lot of times people wait and do that at the beginning of the next year.
Right.
So there is that combination, and usually crypto follows that. So at what point will there be a bunch of extra liquidity in the market? Will it happen before the end of the year, or will it happen at the beginning of the new year? And then will people dump out? Will people freak out on crypto and collect their cash and then start buying some stuff too? There's a lot of things that you got to think about if you're looking at this as an investment. That's why we keep saying, you know what, just buy the car you want. And if the world ends, at least have the car that you want. And the world can burn around you and you can drive fast. And that's rad. And that's the way we think it should be. What do you guys think of the result of this beautiful GT3? Was it well bought? Or was that all the money? Is the market going to crash on these things? Let us know in the comment below. Hey guys, thanks for watching this clip of the Bid Nerds podcast. Play along with us live every Sunday and Wednesday night at 6:30 p.m. on YouTube. And see if your bids stack up to the rest of the nerd herd in the chat live. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Nerd! Get the nerd!